Hello everybody, my name is Brandon. Welcome back to Cinefessions, where we talk all things media. So it is officially October 19th, which means it's day one of my 13 days of Halloween special, where I have decided to lock myself in to the Asylum for 13 straight days. So that means that you guys get 13 videos in 13 days celebrating everything that is glorious and terrible about the Asylum. So I figured what better way to kick this entire celebration off than to start with a movie that is, I think, the first Asylum film I ever saw, and a good reason I always give Asylum films a chance. Paranormal Entity from 2009. Like I mentioned, I think this is one of, if not the first Asylum film I ever saw. I didn't really have the concept of Mockbuster at that time, but of course, this is a Mockbuster for Paranormal Activity. Paranormal Activity was released in 2007. This came out a couple years later. This really came out after the craze of Paranormal Activity took off. We were getting Paranormal Activity 2 in 2010. And so this follows very similar beats, but we'll get into that though. So today, day one, we are going to be looking at this one here, a Mockbuster for the super uber popular Paranormal Activity. Is this one as good as I remember? Is it better than Paranormal Activity? Let's talk about it. All right, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like down below. That really does help me out. But with that said, let's not waste any more time at all. Let's dive right into day one of my 13 days of Halloween special with a review of Paranormal Entity from 2009. Not every movie I'm going to talk about during these next 13 days are ones I own in the physical form, but this one I happen to. I found this relatively recently at, I think it was Disc Replay I found it at. It was in one of my hauls, maybe within the last year here, but this one is bare bones as it gets. I'll say that. There's only the movie itself on there, and then there's actually like a digital copy, so I'm guessing if you stick this same disc into a computer, you'll get a digital version of the film, but I don't know. I haven't messed with that, so I don't know how that works, but that's neither here nor there. This one is, like I said, from 2009, directed by Shane Van Dyke, who also plays the brother, but he's like behind the camera the entire time. He does come on screen a little bit, but you don't really see his face much through this at all. There is a spot later in the film where he's doing basically a monologue, but he's in shadow, like there's backlighting, so you can't make out his face at all. It's like one of those witness protection things that you would see on like Unsolved Mysteries or whatever. But so he is directing it, and he's technically acting in it. And I'll say right at the front, he's probably the weakest link when it comes to acting, because I feel that the other two that are in this, or there's three others that are in this, who are just really surprisingly good. But I'm jumping ahead. Paranormal Entity is exactly what you think it is. It is a ripoff of Paranormal Activity. We are following this brother who is filming everything. He lives with he's now living with his sister and his mom. Their father died in an accident maybe a year or two prior to this, and the mother has started like writing to the dad. First it was talking to him, and she would act like she was hearing responses from him, and then it became writing to the dad, who she believes at least that he was writing back, but there might be something a little more evil that's writing back or communicating back with them. And so we're already kind of entering this after the family's already decided that something is wrong. The brother might be a little iffy on it, but the mom and the sister, especially the sister, she knows that something's going on, because the entity that, the titular entity is affecting her. It's haunting her the most. And so that's where the film picks up. There's this like one throwaway line at the beginning where the brother says, oh, the psychologist guy or whatever said to film everything as a way to document what's going on. So that's the reason for the why everything's being filmed. There is a camera in the sister's room, a camera in the mother's room, a camera in the living room. The brother has like a mobile camera that he always walks around with, but there's no camera in the brother's room because he says that you don't want to see what's going on in my room. So I don't know, that was a strange choice, but that's the way they went with it. So you have these three main characters, and like I said, the weakest would be the brother. The sister is played by Erin Marie Hogan, and the mother is played by Thea Perara. and they are both really good. Each of them have a monologue at different points, toward like the beginning and the middle of the film, kind of explaining what has happened up until this point. And they do a really good job with it. It just feels believable. And I think the interaction amongst the siblings, especially at the start, is so hostile, but it feels like a genuine relationship between a brother and sister who are going through a very difficult time with their father, missing their father, and then all of this paranormal activity that's going on in the house. And so I think that's what I like about this movie most, and probably the same as the first time I watched it, is that I think the acting is great here for the most part. The problem is when you get into those high emotional moments, that's when the brother picks in. So Shane Van Dyke picks up a lot. And he basically is like, he's either even keel, normal, or he's at like a 10, and there's just not a lot of range with him. So I can see why he tried to keep himself out of it a little bit. But frankly, he's probably the main character here because he is the one controlling the camera. So from like the audience perspective, we're dealing with him a lot. And so unfortunately, I wish like Van Dyke would have cast somebody else to play that role. But they probably saved money doing it this way, and it's the Asylum. So that's always a good thing for them to save money, obviously. But yeah, I do feel like he was just his range was a bit limited. It was either I'm yelling and screaming and things are terrifying, or what's going on in my house type of thing. And so there was just not a lot of range, so that was a little disappointing. But on the other hand, when things got emotionally intense for the mother and the sister, I thought they were just really good at portraying what was going on. They had different levels. I will say that the characters are a little one note. Like the sister, for example, she's kind of pissy and sarcastic at the beginning, and she basically stays that way for most of the film. There is a little bit of deviation from that, but for the most part, you're not really getting a big character arc from anybody here. And I think they kind of box themselves in with this because you're starting this movie kind of in the middle of this, or kind of frankly toward the end of this haunting that's going on that will eventually, affect them in ways they couldn't possibly imagine. And so I think they box themselves in a little bit there. The other character that is brought in is the doctor, and it's just like you would see in Paranormal Activity. The beats here, which honestly is not typical for a mockbuster from Asylum, but the beats here are so very familiar to what you saw in Paranormal Activity, the original one. And so that was a little disappointing. Like there's an attic scene, there's the doctor scene, like it's just very similar beats. It does deviate a little bit, but for the most part, you know what you're getting here, for better or for worse. But the doctor, I think, is just excellent. Like he has a very small role toward the end of the movie, but he's just so believable. It just feels so genuine. I really liked that actor. I thought he was just great. And so he was an awesome addition toward the end of the film as we're starting to wrap things up. There are some moments throughout this that did feel a little bit slower than they needed to be. I would, comparing this to Paranormal Activity, I think Paranormal Activity was a little tighter when it comes to things like, how much of the action of setup are we going to show? Because there's a moment where he's setting up bells on a string so that, if anything walks by, he'll be able to hear it. And that scene goes on for a very long time. Honestly, though, the payoff for it, I think, is done really well. And I think that's what is done better on Paranormal Entity than with Paranormal Activity, is that payoff. Paranormal Activity is a movie that I have watched more times than I could probably say at this point, and I have disliked it every time I've watched it. So for my money, Paranormal Entity is a film I enjoy more than Paranormal Activity. But I will say that Paranormal Activity is a better made film. But I really think Paranormal Activity holds its own for what it's trying to do. I am going to try to keep my reviews during these 13 days as succinct as possible, so I'll leave it there and just say that I think the ending of this is just out of nowhere. It is so abrupt that it just, like, it hits you kind of in a different way than you might expect because it just comes out of nowhere, which is similar to Paranormal Activity. They were definitely going for that same style of ending, but again, I thought Paranormal Entity did it better than Paranormal Activity. It's just a creepier movie in my eyes. It made me tense more than Paranormal Activity does. It makes me jump a little bit more than Paranormal Activity. Though again, those slow scenes do really bog it down. So I'm probably in the minority that will like this one better, but hey, give it a shot. I think this one is is definitely worth the time. If you like what Paranormal Activity is doing, if you like found footage, things like that, it does feel interesting because it's older. It's like 2009, right? And so you have big tube TVs in the background, and you just have grainy cameras, you know. They're using, you know, prosumer, I think is the level of the camera that they're using. And so the image quality is not the best, but intentionally so. That's what they had at the time. But yeah, so I don't know. I enjoy this movie. I think it's good. So I gave Paranormal Activity 3 out of 5 stars the last time I watched it. I would give Paranormal Entity from 2009 3 out of 5 stars, but I would go back and watch Paranormal Entity before I would want to watch Paranormal Activity because I just enjoy this movie more. So, I mean, I know there's not a lot of people that might agree with me on that one, but hey, that's just the way it goes sometimes. And so day 1 of my 13 days of Halloween has started off quite well, and I am very excited to continue through the rest of these couple weeks here where I get to talk about the Asylum. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like down below. That really does help me out, and let me know your thoughts on Paranormal Entity down in the comments below. If you guys have seen this one, let me know what you think. If it's something that you might check out now after listening to me rant on about it, please tell me that down below as well. And if you're going to avoid it, I'd like to hear about that too. So that's going to do it for today, guys. I just want to say thank you all so much for watching, and I want to encourage you to consume some media today. I'll catch you next time.